Hello, I'm a business operations manager in the major enterprise accounts division of the Telco Global Services organization, and I want to be able to investigate some of my current pipeline in the coming months and understand how the impact of customer satisfaction, customer net promoter scores, and the incidents that may happen at some of those major accounts might impact our ability to close business over the coming months. So I'm going to go into the Oracle Data Visualization toolset and open up some of my pipeline analytics and understand what's happening and where I might be able to influence this. So I'm going to create a new project here. And in this case, I'm going to pull in some data from an existing pipeline feed that I've already got set up. And I could equally add some additional data sets to this as we go on. So this pipeline data set is going to allow me to have a look at the revenue that we've got lined up by our various different products, product family. I'm going to quickly bring this information in and see how this is distributed across the current projects that we've got ongoing. So when I bring this in, it automatically suggests a visualization that will help me understand the distribution of this revenue. So we can see the majority of our business is in our network services division. We've got some security and unified communications areas as well. What I'd like to do is understand this in a little bit more detail. And I quite like this visualization. It helps me see some of the breakdown of the individual products, such as our VPN services, internet services, performance management services. But I want to be able to zoom in and out of this quite quickly alongside some other reports I'm going to put together. So I'm going to actually just change this to a view that I like that's very good for that. And that's this tree map visualization. And what this allows me to do is, for example, to say, well, that gives me a good representation. I can see again, network services is the largest. That's the one that's kind of furthest over onto the left. But I'd also like to see how this particularly breaks down at a country level, for example. So if we focus in by country, then I can see actually where is my business happening across all of these different product sets. So for example, here we've got a breakdown within the network services division, which I can zoom in on quite quickly. And we can see that Germany is where our major projects are actually happening at the moment. That's something I'd like to focus in on as well and see exactly what's happening there. Now here we've got this broken down by product, and we're just seeing the sizes here are driven by the value of those deals. What I'm going to do is actually focus in on what's the probability, what is our current expectations for these to actually happen. So I'm going to swap this around a little bit and bring in probability as a color scheme on top of this. So this shows us that we have the ones which are higher probability that are in the darker blue. So actually some of our other projects that are happening that are smaller in size overall are relatively high probability, but actually some of the ones that are responsible for a majority of our incoming revenue are not looking quite so good, particularly in this German area. Now, one thing that might be interesting here is I want to have a look and see how this is distributed by time based on when precisely we're expecting each of these projects to move forwards. So I'm going to create another view here that's going to show me that. So the target month when we're expecting these things to happen. Let's break that down by stage in the process. Let's look at the revenue and the probability again, similar metrics we've already looked at so far. And for that, I'm just going to go and create a view here, which is going to be a sort of a stat chart of that. So in this case, this will hopefully give us a representation of how by each sales stage. So in this case, we've got sales stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right the way through to proposal. And we can see here that broken down by time as well. So we can see the target months for each of these particular projects. So what I might want to do is actually just to make that a little bit clearer, I'm going to move my sales stages in fact across the top so we can see that progressing from left to right. And what I'd also like to do is see that the revenue and the probability, I'm just going to swap those around so that the revenue is shown by the size of these bars and the probability, just as we see on the one on the left. See, it changes it to blue to match in with it. It's the probability, the darker probability, the ones that are more likely to happen. So we have the expectation the next month we have a significant amount of business coming in that's at the proposal stage that's highlighted by this particular view here. But it's actually still got a relatively low probability, lower than I would have wanted it to be at this stage. And in fact, some of the ones in the future months are actually looking stronger, which is an interesting position to be in. And that's showing me it across the whole of my business. Now here I've zoomed in on this other chart. What I think I'd like to do is actually just particularly apply that as a filter. So let me keep that selected area that I've zoomed in on that second chart. So the first chart, sorry, the Germany Network Services business. How does that compare? So if I apply that as a filter to the second chart I added, now actually we see that the situation is to some extent even worse in this area that is one of our major areas of business, Germany Network Services. We're in an even worse situation where we've got we've actually got a higher proportion of revenue that's expected to be landing next month and is at this last sales stage. But the probability is still very low, and I wouldn't expect us to be in that position where we have a sort of 34% probability of business due to be happening very soon. So I think I need to investigate that a bit further and understand where precisely are these things happening. So let me take another view of this where we can say, let's have a look at that revenue and probability, again broken down by target month. But now let's get right the way down to the individual products that are being positioned by customer, so we can see which particular deals are which are doing well and which aren't. So I'm going to create sort of a white space analysis with this by creating that as a pivot table. Now, so that's done that by default. It's brought me my products, my customers across the top. I think I'm going to swap those over so I can see all of my customers running down the left-hand side. So I can do sort of a proper white space here with the product groups brought together across the top. And what we can see there, we've got both the probability and the revenue for each of these accounts by product. I think I'd like to also sort this so we can see those highest revenue customers listed at the top. Now, from there, that will give me a view that lets me sort of understand what are the key pieces of business that I really want to focus in on. So obviously this Pinnacle Technologies seems to be the one that's got some major deals happening, and I can actually highlight particularly what they are by focusing in on that top bar that I was interested in the first place. So we can see, so Pinnacle Technologies, they've got projects happening next month, some fairly substantial projects, both of revenue sort of around the 300,000 mark, that are due to come in from the looks of it. However, the probability on these is extremely low, so that is a concern, and I think I'm going to need to find some way of covering that potential shortfall, because that's not in a great situation to be in. I can see what other things are happening. We've got the project around, we've got a reasonably substantial one here, actually another sort of 230,000 project with JP Corp for internet services. One way I can potentially look at covering that shortfall that might happen if these deals don't go forward is maybe bringing forward projects that were actually planned for the month after. So there's any way that I can do that. If I can select that particular one, because they were actually looking in a better position, overall probability of those is nearly 80%. So perhaps there's a good chance of bringing them forward. So as I see on the chart below, there are a couple of other deals that fit into that space. Again, actually one of which being with that JP Corp customer that we're actually due to do some business with next month anyway. So maybe there's a good chance we could actually help bring that secondary project forward on the network services, the VPN project, to link in with their other internet services engagement. So in order to understand if I can do that, I think what I'd like to do, and also to understand the risk I'm at from this, these probability problems here, I think I'd like to see what's our customer experience rating, so our net promoter score with these given customers, so I can understand how strong is our relationship there. In order to do that, I'm going to bring in a new data source, because I've actually got a spreadsheet available that has got that information in it. I could have gone and got this from a variety of other different sources, but I'm in fact going to bring this in from a spreadsheet file that I have here. So this file is going to give me the net promoter score, which I'm going to treat here as an average, by customer, by country, and by product as well. So I'm going to add this to my project, and that was actually, you can see matching, it's recognizing the fact that this is linked to some existing field that I've already got in my analysis. And that's a good thing, because that means I can, without having any effort really, I can join these things together and I can see how they compare. Okay, if I want to bring in here now my net promoter score analysis by customer, let me just drag and drop this onto the page. It's going to build a visualization that makes sense for that as well. And I can now see, if we take something like maybe Pinnacle Technologies, which is one of the ones that we've got our potential issue with. If we have a look at that on this chart, actually you can see Pinnacle's there. They are pretty low from an NPS point of view. 35 net promoter score is not very good at all. If I take JP Corp as an alternative, let's have a look at where they are at. Well, that's much better. They've got a 75 MPS. So hopefully that would mean that we could be in a pretty strong position to bring forward that revenue if we've got that level of relationship with that particular customer. Of course, I can see how those sit alongside each other on this report. If I just go and select a couple of these side by side, if we take Pinnacle and JP Corp, we can see where they are there. In fact, let me just sort this high to low so I can see where they fit on the overall spectrum. And then what we effectively see is effectively how JP Corp and Pinnacle are related to each other on that diagram. And there they're actually at we can see there JP Corp is right at the top, Pinnacle Technologies unfortunately right at the bottom. So we've got some work to do obviously in restoring some of that relationship. Hopefully these projects, if they go well, will help that, but we need to potentially bear that in mind as a risk moving forwards. So the other thing I'd like to do that could be related to some of these customer experience issues, and to make sure that we can be confident that we can do the business with JP Corp, I'd like to bring in some of the service information as well. Let me understand what are the incidents that have happened with these customers recently. I've already got another link set up for that, so I'm going to go and bring in my service data. These are my service requests. Later information for these customers. So from there, what I think I'd like to do is just let's bring in, we've already got customer and NPS. Let me bring in the number of SRs. And let's actually compare that to that revenue that we've got that we're working on. So linking together some of the metrics from all three different data sources. I'm going to bring that on here side by side with the other data sets as well. And it's going to build the sort of visualization it thinks makes sense. So this is showing us now a distribution where we've got the Net Promoter Score going up on the left-hand side axis. And we can see that still we've got Pinnacle and JP Corp highlighted. So I guess that's JP Corp right at the top and Pinnacle down there at the bottom. We see our revenue. So our highest revenue is out there with Pinnacle. That's at risk from what we're seeing here, and also the colouring on this, the darker red, is showing that we've actually got many more SRs open with Pinnacle. So actually we've got 42 outstanding SRs there with Pinnacle. Now that is a real problem potentially, and I think that I'd like to look at that a little bit more detail as well. So let's understand what is the severity of each of these SRs. If I bring that in and drop that into the rows, perhaps we can understand how these are distributed by high, medium, low, critical SR situation. So we can see from a criticality point of view, there we go, we've got actually we've got two SRs there in that critical position with Pinnacle, so that's definitely going to need some attention. We've got 21 high priority SRs, so definitely they need to be looked at. And actually, if we see up here, so there are 3 SRs outstanding with JP Corp. So given the fact I want to try and bring some business with them forward, I think I'm definitely going to want to have a look at that in a bit more detail. And I can certainly filter this down, just maybe keep the JP Corp and Pinnacle customers from this data set, and actually maybe go and share some of this with some of my colleagues, and I can quite easily go to look at some of the raw data having applied these filters. Let's go have a look at some of the raw data behind this that I'm building these views upon. I can go and take that list of service requests to get all the details from there, and go and pass that over to my colleagues to go and understand how can we go and sort out these potential ones that are outstanding with JP Corp that could prevent us from doing some of that business. So I think I've got a way to move forwards. I looked at my pipeline. I can see where there are some ways I can perhaps fill in potential shortfall. I know I've got some customers that I need to improve some of that customer experience with, and I know which SRs need the greatest attention in order to help me fulfill my obligations.